نمضي جنودا نجوب الوهادي نمضي أسودا لا نخشى الوغادي نمضي جنودا.
IDCA is a non-profit organisation and was founded in 1998. Currently operating from 86 Auburn Road in Auburn, almost exclusively staffed by volunteers, they provide the wider community with authentic Islamic literature such as books, videos, DVDs, CDs and audio cassettes. IDCA has its own video and audio production and distribution facilities and work tirelessly to raise community awareness about Islam. IDCA currently runs classes and lessons for men and women up to 3 times a week and provides Quran school on weekends for children between the ages of 5 and 15. Their bookshop, along with IDCA's volunteers, service both the Muslim and non-Muslim communities by providing dawah through a wide range of products such as books on hadith, sunnah, children's stories, as well as providing Islamic clothing, perfumes, prayer clocks and many more. With the youth being one of IDCA's main focuses, they provide support through counselling services, information and education. They organise regular activities such as sporting outings, skirmish, barbecues and camps. Each month, notable local and interstate speakers are invited to give lectures on important and relevant topics. This also extends to well-known international lecturers, although less frequently due to the costs involved.
ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله. ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله. من أنزل الأمطار وفجر الأنهار وأنبت الأزهار تزخرف الجبال. من أنزل الأمطار وفجر الأنهار وأنبت الأزهار تزخرف الجبال. ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله. ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله. من علم العصفور في الجو أن يطير ومن جلى الغدير ودفاق الشلال. من علم العصفور في الجو أن يطير ومن جلى الغدير ودفاق الشلال.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له وما يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وبعد. خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الحدي حدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. We begin by praising Allah, and we praise Him and we seek His help and we ask for His forgiveness, and we seek refuge with Allah from the evil of ourselves and from the evil consequence of our evil actions. Whomsoever Allah guides, there is none to misguide, and whomsoever Allah leaves to go astray, there is none to guide. And I testify that Allah alone is worthy of worship, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he is the servant of Allah and His final messenger. After that, the best speech is the book of Allah, and the best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the worst of all the affairs are those matters that have been newly introduced into the religion. And every matter that is newly introduced into the religion is a bid'ah or an innovation. And all of the innovations are misguidance. All the misguidance is going astray, and all the going astray is in the fire. Today, alhamdulillah, the brothers have chosen to ask me to speak about a very important topic, a topic that really is an essential part of our aqeedah. In fact, this topic is really concerning the matter that distinguishes the true believer and the people who are adhering to the correct path and the good way, as opposed to those people who have deviated and have gone astray from the straight path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained for us. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that my ummah will divide into 73 sects, and all of them will be in the hellfire except one. And his companions asked, who is that one, O Messenger of Allah? Who is that one that is saved from the fire? Who is that group or that sect that will be successful? And the Prophet ﷺ said, that to which I and my companions belong. In various narrations it mentions that to which I and my companions belong, that to which I and my companions belong this day. And in another narration he mentioned they are the jama'ah, and another they are the jama'ah means the group or the large group. And in another narration, he mentions that they are the vast majority, the Sawad al-Azam, the great majority. And so all of these hadith together explain something very important. That those people who are on the right path, those people that are from the Firqatul Najiyah, which means the saved sect, they are the people who are following what the Prophet ﷺ and his companions were upon in his lifetime that day, before there was dissensions and divisions amongst the ummah. That which he and his companions are upon. So the companions, they are the jama'ah. They are the jama'ah. And at that time, they were the vast majority of the Muslims at that time. And insha'Allah, through the whole of time, they will be the vast majority, those people who are following the correct path. However, there are times when Islam will become strange. As the Prophet ﷺ told us, Islam came as a stranger, and it will become strange once again. So glad tidings, ghuraba, glad tidings, tuba for the strangers. This tuba is a tree in paradise, or it could be said glad tidings for the strangers. So there are times when this way of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions is strange. It is a strange way, and those people who are following it are a minority. And so it is very important not to misunderstand these hadith as some people have, in order to think that what most of the people are upon is therefore the way of the companions. No. The jama'ah is not the rabble of the people. The jama'ah is not the masses of the people. The jama'ah are the people upon the truth. The jama'ah are the people upon the truth, even if it is one. Even if it is only one. If there is one person who is upon the truth, and the truth being the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the way that the companions were upon, if there's only one person, that person is the jama'ah. In fact, there have been times in the history of Islam when people used to consider that the jama'ah was just one man. For example, in the time of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, when there was the Inquisition, when the Mu'tazila, they were a group of people who relied on logic and reason, and they came up with some speculative ideas, and amongst the things that they said was that the Quran was makhluk, the Quran was created. And there was a big dissension, and they tried to enforce this ideology. They tried to enforce it. In other words, they tried to impose it by force. And in fact, very few of the people resisted this bid'ah. In fact, it came to a stage when, as they say, for one day, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he was Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, because he, although alhamdulillah, the masses, many of the masses of people never accepted this, but he was the one person standing up for the truth and refuting this falsehood. So the Jama'ah could be one person. And this is, by the way, where we get the term Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. This is where we get the term Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, which means the people of the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, which is by implication the saved group, those people who are trying to follow the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. However, of course, today the term Ahlul Sunnah covers a wide variety of groups, within which also there are people who are not upon what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions were upon. And thus some scholars, they believe that we need a new designation. It is no longer enough for us to call ourselves Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, because which group and which sect from Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah do you belong to? Are you Ash'ari? Are you Sufi? Are you this one? Are you Maturidi? Are you, they want to know which group and which way of thinking and which path are you following within Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So therefore some scholars thought we need a different designation. They said this is why some of them chose the word Salafi. Salafi means the people who follow the Salaf. Like Hanbali is someone who follows Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and Hanafi is someone who follows Abu Hanifa. So Salafi is supposed to be someone who follows the Salaf. This is the first 3 generations of the Muslims, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith, the meaning of which is, the best of the generations is my generation. The best of the generations is my generation, then the one that follows them and the one that follows them. So the first 3 generations of Islam, and this is Allahu Alim, meaning the first 300 years. A generation is 100 years. So the first 3 generations, or those people who appeared in the first 3 generations of Islam, they were the best. And the best of them were, of course, those who were with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sahaba. However, what is not important, brothers and sisters, in truth, is the name. Whether we call ourselves Ahlul Sunnah or whether we call ourselves Salafi, and some people may not agree to call yourself Salafi. They may think and may believe that this is not necessary and this is a further division and a further complication. This is a matter of difference of opinion, and we don't need to be overbearing on one another, whether we call ourselves this or not. It's not important. What is important, however, truly important, is our behavior, is our belief, is our way. That is truly important. That is the truly important matter. The truly important matter is what we actually follow. Because my brothers and sisters, I have seen many people and groups and organizations who call themselves Salafi. And they use this term Salafi. And every time they have the chance, they say Salafi, 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 Salafi. And in fact, what you find in some of these people, some of them, is that in fact, they themselves have made themselves into a separate sect. They have made themselves into a separate group. They love the people who are with them, and they do not love the people who are not with them, even though those other people actually follow the same aqidah, they follow the same way, they turn to the same scholars, but because they have a disagreement over this thing or that thing, or there is some issue which they do not agree about, which is an issue of difference of opinion amongst the ulama, but they make wala and bara on this. They make their allegiance on this and that. And this, of course, is the greatest and the beginning of the form of every deviation. In fact, this is how we become deviated. We become deviated when we select some opinions or a particular scholar, and we insist that everybody must follow that set of opinions and that scholar in exclusion to another. And this is not the way of the companions. This is not the way of the best of all generations. So what is very important, my brothers and sisters, in these days is to understand as much as we can that we need to return to the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. And that's what I want to talk about this way, the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the way of his companions. And I want to talk about, first of all, why. Why is their way the best way? Surely these days, as the brother mentioned, with all our technology and our universities and our internet and our emails and all our different means of communication, we are more advanced and we have access to more information. And you may imagine and may think that we have become more sophisticated and more advanced. In fact, there is a group of people who had this thinking in the past. They used to say that the way of the Salaf is wiser. The way of the Salaf is safer, but the way of the Khalaf is wiser. Meaning what they said is the way of the old people, meaning the way of the companions, this is safe. If you stick to their way, you say what they said, you do what they did, you're safe. But actually, they were very simple people. They didn't have a deep, sophisticated understanding of things. So their deen was simple, their understanding was simple. But our understanding, as they claimed, is wise. Because now we have access to philosophy and we have access to so many different ways of thinking about things. And we are very sophisticated. So they claimed that our way is the wise way. Actually, no. The way of the Salaf is the safe way and the wise way. And the reason for that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all that we need in the revelation to know how to worship Him. Essentially, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in the Quran and the Sunnah is how we need to know how to worship Allah. How is it possible that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the Messenger of Allah, who spent 23 years conveying the message of Islam and teaching the message of Islam, failed to convey the message of Islam in some of its most important points? For example, concerning the names and the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which these Khalaf claim that they are able to make ta'wil and to make interpretation of, and that they, as they claim, have a better understanding than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. This in fact is their claim. A'udhu billah. We seek refuge with Allah from that. No, rather there are two things. From logic and from revelation. Both the aql and the naql. That means the aql is our intelligence. And the naql means the text. The text meaning the Quran, the book of Allah, and the Sunnah or the Hadith, the authentic Hadith here of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Both of them confirm this fact. Both of them confirm this fact. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Islam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And who are the people who sat in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Who are the people who sat in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Who are the ones who witnessed not only the revelation, and by the way, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to receive revelation, it had a physical appearance. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to sweat. If one time he was sitting on a camel and the camel sagged from the weight of the revelation. Once he was leaning on one of his companions and the revelation came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this companion couldn't take it due to the weight and the pressure of the revelation coming on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These people experienced that. These are the people to whom Jibreel came to teach them their religion. The angel Gabriel came to sit amongst them and teach them their deen. These are the companions. These are the people who knew the circumstance of the revelation. Which ayah was revealed in which circumstance. They are the ones who saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam pray. They saw him with their eyes. They saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam fast and make hajj. And so on and so forth. So they lived with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were his companions. They were eyewitnesses to the events. They would sit and learn directly from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the deen. So who could know better about Islam than his companions? It is absolutely logical that the people who would know best about this religion are the people who studied from the messenger to whom this religion was revealed. This is from aql. This is from logic. Actually, this is also the main reason why when I first became Muslim, I could never become Shia. I could never have become a Shia. Because when I first became Muslim, in fact, at the time, the Iranian Revolution was very strong. And outside the mosque where I now work, which is the main mosque in London, the Regent's Park Mosque, the Central Mosque, every week you used to have the Shia handing out a newspaper, Al-Khayran it was called. And we used to read it avidly. And we used to follow this slogan, no East, no West, Islam is the best, and all that type of stuff. Okay? And you know, Khomeini for many people was a big hero because it seemed as if he had shown to the world that once again we could implement Islam and have an Islamic state as we thought. But so I began to study Shiism and what it was teaching and what it was saying. And the big conflict I came was the attitude of the Shia towards the Sahaba. Now many of you may know and some of you may not that the Shia, first of all, they are a very small minority amongst the Muslims. They are only 15%. 85% of Muslims are Sunnis. Walhamdulillah. The Shia only constitute about 15%. So they are a small minority. However, their claim is, amongst the many things that they say, is that the majority of the companions of the Prophet apostatized from Islam after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Particularly the three taghuts, who they call, a'udhu billah, the three taghuts, Abu Bakr, Omar and Uthman. They call them the three taghuts, which means, taghut means a false god. Something that anything that is worshipped besides Allah is a false god. And it could mean an unjust ruler who rules according to other than the guidance of Islam. He is a taghut. So they call them the three taghuts. Because they claim that Abu Bakr and Umar and Ali, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with them, usurped and deprived Ali of the rightful inheritance of being the successor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course most of the companions agreed with that, so they also claimed that most of the companions apostatized from Islam. But I thought this is incredible. How is it that Allah chose to be the companions of the messenger, a group of people who after his death apostatized from his religion? And these are the people who spent all of their life with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are the people who are ready to give and often did give their lives in the service of Islam to protect the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to protect the religion that the Prophet preached. How they sacrificed their money and their time and everything for the cause of Allah and His religion. Yet when the messenger dies, they apostatized. It doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. It seems to be a totally irrational proposition. Rather, we believe that the companions are the best of all the human beings after the prophets. And the best of the human beings after the prophets is Abu Bakr. And the best after him is Umar. And the best after him, although there's some disagreement, is it Ali or Uthman, or are they the same? But it will seem that the stronger evidence shows us that it is Uthman ibn Affan and then Ali. These are the best. And then after that, we don't make a distinction amongst the companions. But generally also the companions themselves are the best of the human beings after the messengers. This is the status of the Sahaba with us. Not only in their piety and their closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but of course in their understanding and their way that they followed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talked about this way in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about this way in the Quran. So in the Quran, in fact, we find that Allah Himself is making the sabil of the mu'mineen, the path of the believers, a way that we must follow. So in one ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions the English meaning of which is, whoever contends with the messenger after the truth has been made plain to him and chooses a path other than the path of the believers, then Allah will leave him in the path that he has chosen and land him in hell. What an evil refuge. Now Allah could have left it at saying whoever contends with the messenger, they will go to hell. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not only mention that whoever contends with the messenger, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentioned and chooses a way other than the way of the believers. So there are two things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning to us here that constitute guidance from God. One is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is the clear and absolute and unequivocal guidance that is infallible. But Allah is also leading us to look at the way of the believers. And this way in general is also guidance. This is where we get the concept of ijma'. This is where we get the concept of consensus from in Islam. We find that there are three forms of guidance in Islam: the Quran, the Sunnah, and ijma'. Ijma' means the consensus of this ummah. If the nation of the Muslims, all together, all of us, without any disagreement, agree upon something, then that is considered to be guidance from Allah. That is considered to be the same as what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala agrees with. Now, some scholars, for example, Ahmed ibn Hanbal, he says ijma' is only for the companions. Consensus is only for the companions. Now he has some reasons for that. One of them being that he doesn't believe that it's possible to establish ijma' after the time of the Sahaba. It's not possible because the scholars are spread out over so many places. It's difficult, or if maybe impossible, to establish consensus. So he limits consensus, ijma', to the Sahaba. So their collective opinion about something, if we can establish that all of the companions had a consensus about something, then without any doubt, this is from the religion of Islam. It is impossible that all of the companions together could have agreed about something that was misguidance. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ told us. My ummah will never agree upon misguidance. We will never agree upon something, and especially the Sahaba would never agree upon something that was misguidance. And in fact, there was ijma' amongst the companions that Abu Bakr was the best amongst them, and that Umar was the next best amongst them, and that then they used to have some disagreement about Uthman or Ali. However, there is consensus amongst them that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was the best amongst the companions, and Umar ibn al-Khattab was the best after that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that not only whoever contends with the messenger, but whoever takes a path and follows a way other than the sabil of the mu'mineen, the way of the believers, then Allah, He will leave them in that path. They chose it, Allah will leave them in it. And what is going to happen to them? Their ultimate destination is going to be hellfire. And this you can see, this ayah is explained by the hadith of the 73 sects. The Jews and Christians divided into 72 sects. And my ummah will divide into 73 sects. All of them in the hellfire except one. This one is the one who follow the companions. So we see how this hadith explains this ayah. So the sabil of the mu'mineen, the way of the believers, is the way of the companions. And that is the way of guidance. And it is essential therefore that every Muslim and every true Muslim must not only attribute to themselves the path of the companions and the understanding of the companions, but it's not just attributing it, it's practically being true to it and being honest towards it. So this is the sabil of the mu'mineen. This is the way of the believers, and these believers are being referred to here, the Sahaba. There is another very beautiful hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was giving a farewell sermon. He was giving a farewell sermon. And he wasn't giving a farewell sermon, he was giving a khutbah, a sermon. But one of the companions stood up, he said, "O Messenger of Allah, it seems as if this is a farewell sermon. So advise us." So actually this sermon started to make the Sahaba cry. You know, their hearts were so moved and they started to cry when they heard this sermon of the Prophet ﷺ. So they said, "O Messenger of Allah, advise us." That's what he said. So the Prophet ﷺ, brothers and sisters, gave some very precious words of advice. Some very precious words of advice. He said, "I advise you to have taqwa of Allah. I advise you to fear Allah. And hear and obey your Amir, even if he is an Abyssinian slave. After me, you will see great ikhtilaf, great differing. So cling to my sunnah and the sunnah of the Khulafa ar-Rashidin, the rightly guided successors, and bite it with your teeth. And beware of the bid'ah. Beware of the newly invented matters in the religion. Because every newly invented matter in the religion is misguidance, and every misguidance is going astray, and every going astray is in the fire." This, brothers and sisters, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon you, is a very, very important hadith for our times today. It is an important hadith for all times, but especially in our time when there is so much differing. There is so much differing. Great ikhtilaf, great differing. And people often come and they often ask, almost in despair, "What shall I do? It is so difficult. There is so much differing. There are so many different opinions." And the Prophet ﷺ, he really gave us the answer to this. And he told us to cling. First of all, he told us to, of course, have taqwa of Allah. What is, brothers and sisters, taqwa? What is taqwa? Some people translate taqwa as the fear of Allah. They say it is the fear of God. However, the concept of taqwa is much more than just fear of God. The concept of taqwa, my brothers and sisters, really could be better translated as God consciousness, being conscious of Allah. However, let us give a even more detailed definition of taqwa. Taqwa means to obey Allah, or let's say, taqwa means to leave disobedience to Allah with the fear, with being afraid of Allah and being afraid of His punishment, with a light from Allah. Okay? So it means, taqwa means to leave disobedience to Allah with a light from Allah, fearing Allah's punishment, and it also means to obey Allah with a light from Allah, hoping for Allah's reward. Okay? So this is what taqwa means. That a person leaves the haram things, the forbidden things. And the light from Allah is, of course, according to Allah's guidance. The light from Allah is the guidance through which and by which we know what is halal and haram. In other words, the Quran and the Sunnah and the understanding of the companions. And of course, the person leaves the sins because we are afraid of God's punishment in this life and the next. Because sin has evil consequences. It has an evil consequence in this life, and it has an evil consequence in the life to come. And taqwa also means to obey Allah, to do acts that are pleasing to Allah, to do the things that Allah loves. And we do that with a light from Allah, and we hope for Allah's reward. That is what motivates us to obey God, because we are hopeful for the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is taqwa. And one companion, Abu Hurairah, was it Umar, I don't remember, he described taqwa. He was asked, what is taqwa? And he said, have you ever walked along a path that is covered with thorns? And so the person said, yes. He said, how did you walk along that path? Well, he said, very carefully. He said, this is taqwa. This is taqwa. So the person who has taqwa goes through life avoiding the things that are going to snag him and tear his clothes and so on and so forth. In other words, the haram things. Mindful and careful not to do the things that are displeasing to Allah. This is taqwa. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ is first of all advising us with. To have taqwa. Fear Allah, be mindful of Allah, avoid the haram things. And then He's telling us to obey our Amir. That when there is someone in charge of us, but specifically the Amir al-Mu'mineen, but in fact anyone who is in charge of us, who has been appointed to be in charge of us, we should hear and obey. Even if that Amir is an Abyssinian slave. Now to the Arabs at the time, the Abyssinian slave was the lowest level in society. He was the lowest level in society. But the Prophet ﷺ is telling us the importance of obedience to the Amir. Even if that person is not from our class or from our color. And of course, an Abyssinian slave is not Arab. It's not a thing based on race, Islam. We don't listen to someone because he's an Arab, and we don't listen to him if he's not Arab. No. We don't obey our Amir just because of this and that. No, we should obey the Amir. Of course, we all know that obedience to the Amir is only in obedience to Allah. If your Amir ever orders you to disobey God or to do something that is against what God wants, you should not obey that. Obedience is never to a created being in disobedience to Allah. So, hear and obey the Amir, even if he's an Abyssinian slave. And then the Prophet tells us, after me, you are going to see great differing. You are going to see great differing. You know, that's almost natural. And I'm sure that many of us must think sometimes how beautiful it must have been in the time when the Prophet ﷺ was alive. When people had disagreements, when there was any problems, they used to say, let's go and ask the Messenger about this. I'm going to go and ask the Messenger ﷺ about this. This is what they used to do. And of course, the Messenger himself ﷺ, he is not with us anymore. Of course, the Quran is, and the Sunnah is. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, cling to my Sunnah, cling to my way. And the Sunnah here, by the way, brothers and sisters, does not mean, some people have a wrong understanding of Sunnah. They think Sunnah means non-obligatory acts. And this is a big confusion that has arisen due to some things becoming mixed up and confused. So some people, some scholars, they referred to and still refer to the non-obligatory acts in the religion as sunnah. So for example, the 4 rak'ah before dhuhr, or the 4 rak'ah after dhuhr, or the 2 rak'ah that we pray after Isha, or after Maghrib, or for example, fasting the Mondays and the Thursdays. These are known as sunnah. They're not an obligation. They're not something we have to do. There is no sin in not doing those. They're not obliged upon us. They're voluntary. And so these have become known as sunnah. However, this is not the meaning of sunnah here. And nor was that the meaning or the understanding of the meaning of sunnah in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. By the way, this is why some people imagine the beard is sunnah. They say, well, the beard is only sunnah. Because they think that it's something the Prophet did, therefore it's not obligatory. I can do it if I want, I can do it if I don't want. And this is because they're confused about what the word sunnah means. In fact, the sunnah encompasses the whole of Islam. The whole of Islam is the sunnah. In fact, it is not an exaggeration what the great Imam Barbahari said in his book Sharh Sunnah, the explanation of the sunnah. He said, Islam is the sunnah and the sunnah is Islam. Islam is the sunnah and the sunnah is Islam. And this is no exaggeration. In fact, if you think about it, how do we know how to pray? How do we know the details of the prayer? What are the times of the prayer? What do we recite in our prayer? When do we recite out loud? What is a rak'ah? How many rak'ah in each prayer? Do we know this from the Quran? No, we only know this from the Sunnah. But does anyone deny and would anyone claim that it's not obligatory? That we can pray Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha any way we like? Can we pray 100 rak'ah for Dhuhr? Fard? Can we? Because the 4 rak'ah is only Sunnah? No. No one says that. Well, not yet. There probably is someone who says that. You know, there probably will be someone one day who says something like that. But alhamdulillah, most people recognize that this is not the case. So we realize that the sunnah contains things that are obligatory, some that are voluntary, and some things the Prophet ﷺ did. It's not either obligatory or recommended, or, you know, the Prophet drank water. Is it sunnah therefore to drink water and an act of religious worship? No, that's just something the Prophet ﷺ did according to his time and according to his circumstance. The Prophet ﷺ rode a camel. Does it mean it's sunnah for us to ride a camel? No, that's just a product of the circumstance and the time in which the Prophet ﷺ lived. But there are other things that the Prophet ﷺ did that he was ordered to do by Allah, and that he ordered us to do it. And whatever the Prophet ordered us, we must do it. And whatever the Prophet ﷺ ordered us to leave, we must leave it. And this is what Allah Himself said in the Quran, the meaning of which is, whatever the Prophet gives you, take it. Whatever the Prophet orders you to leave, leave it. That's why Abdullah ibn Abbas, when he was approached by a woman who said to him, I heard that you have prohibited the plucking of the eyebrows and that you curse the women who do that. I have read the Quran from cover to cover and I didn't find this. Abdullah ibn Abbas said, go and read it again. Go and read it again. So she came back and she said, I read it again and I still didn't find that verse. I didn't find anything talking about plucking the eyebrows. He said, didn't you come across the verse that said, whatever the Prophet orders you with, take it, and whatever the Prophet orders you to leave, leave it? She said, yes, I came across that. And he said, Wallahi, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that any woman who plucks her eyebrows, she is cursed. That Allah cursed the woman who plucks her eyebrows. So therefore, whatever the Prophet has told us is the same. If the Prophet has ordered it, it's the same as Allah ordered it. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not speak from his own desires. When he ordered us something from the religion, it's because it was revealed to him by Allah. The angel Jibreel brought down the Quran, and the angel Jibreel brought down the Sunnah. The angel Gabriel brought down the Quran, and the angel Gabriel brought down the Sunnah. It is Jibreel who taught the Prophet how to pray. It is Jibreel who taught the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam how to make wudu. So we should cling to the Sunnah. And that Sunnah, by the way, my brothers and sisters, includes beliefs. In fact, the most first and important part of the Sunnah is what we believe concerning Allah and His angels and His messengers and His books and what is going to take place after death and the divine decree, the good of it and the bad of it. This is the most important part of the Sunnah. Because indeed this is the Iman which Islam has come to teach the people the correct belief. So the Prophet ﷺ said, cling to my Sunnah. But he didn't leave it there. He didn't leave it. And it is true, there is a narration where the Prophet ﷺ mentions that whoever clings to the book of Allah and my Sunnah will not go astray. Yes. But part of the Sunnah of the Prophet is also to follow the Sunnah of the Khulafa ar-Rashideen. One of the things the Prophet had ordered us with is to follow the way of the rightly guided successors. And first and foremost, these rightly guided successors are Abu Bakr, Uthman, Umar, Uthman and Ali. They are the Khulafa ar-Rashideen. But all of the companions are also part of the rightly guided successors. So we have been ordered by the Prophet ﷺ in these times of confusion, in these times of ikhtilaf, to go back, cling to the Sunnah, the way of the Messenger, and the understanding of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and those great companions who learned from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is part of our deen, and this is part of our aqeedah. This is part of our way that we have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so let us look to the beautiful saying of Imam Malik. Or was it Imam Shafi'i? Someone will remind me. Nothing will reform or rectify the end of this ummah except that which rectified its beginning. In other words, what is he saying? Nothing is going to make these Muslims, this nation, nothing is going to make us straight, nothing is going to make us successful, nothing is going to make us succeed except that which made the beginning of this ummah successful. So what is going to make us on the right way is what made them on the right way. What is going to make us successful is what made them successful. And what was it that made them successful, brothers and sisters in Islam? This is a very important question. What is it that made the companions so successful? What was it about them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established this beautiful religion of Islam through them? That Islam spread in 80 years. In 80 years, it's considered, non-Muslim historians have remarked that it is one of the most amazing events in the history of humanity